Now we come towards the end or the last topic of nationalism. That is unification of Germany. Unification of Germany basically had its seeds sown during the Napoleonic Wars. In the Napoleonic Wars, Hitler had basically created a sort of federation of all the German kingdoms that he had conquered. And when the Congress of Vienna took over and decided what to do after the post-Napoleonic eras, they created a sort of um, loose federation of German-speaking people, which basically had Prussia and Austria as the largest nations or empires within it, and Austria being the largest empire was the leader of the federation. Okay, now the idea of nationalism had spread in the Germanic nations too, and there had been many revolts with the objective of creating a sort of republic of united German-speaking nations, but which has equally ruthlessly been crushed by these kingdoms. As it was talking about democracy and a republic, so it was crushed. Now, the Prussian king, King Wilhelm I, wanted to modernize his army and at the same time was not very keen and happy about his parliament interfering in what he considered his own private territory, Prussia. So he basically got a guy called Otto von Bismarck, a junker or otherwise a Junker, appointed as the prime minister. Now, what are these Junkers? These Junkers are basically aristocrats who also were known as conservatives, who basically considered the idea of democracy as uncool and the idea of a monarchy to be really, really cool, and therefore did not support the democratic parliament. So, with the help of Otto von Bismarck, the king tried to wrest back the power that the parliament or the democracy had taken away from. And we'll talk about that now. Yeah, so basically, as soon as Bismarck comes to power, he, with the authority given to him by the king, takes over the parliament and starts massive spendings over the reformation and modernization of the Prussian army. After doing that, he basically wants to replace Austria as the leader of the Prussian German-speaking nations in the Germanic Federation. So what he does is he entices, he involves and interests Austria into a joint venture of invading and attacking a third country called Denmark and basically taking over the territory of Schleswig and Holstein and dividing it between themselves. Austria gets enticed, goes ahead. Within a few days, they are able to take over that territory. And then is what Bismarck shows his brilliance in. He basically engineers causes for grudges between the two. He creates and engineers another war with Austria, and Austria, actually, which was not ready for the war, basically plunges into the war, and Bismarck and his modernized army are able to give Austria a crushing defeat. Not only that, they also help Italy by helping it get a territory which it was not able to get during the unification of Italy from Austria, and therefore replace Austria as the leading German-speaking nations under the Austrian Federation. The kingdoms of northern Prussia, the small kingdoms of northern Prussia, which were Protestant kingdoms, readily joined the Prussian Empire, but the southern Prussian kingdoms, German-speaking kingdoms, were not so keen to join a collaboration of German-speaking nation led by a Protestant Prussia, and therefore Bismarck started looking for ways and means to get the southern German-speaking nations into this collaboration. So what he did was again engineer a war. One of the small Prussian kings was a distant relative of the king of Spain, who very recently had died without a heir. So this Prussian prince was invited to become the king of Spain. Now, according to the laws of the medieval age, because he was a vassal of the King of Prussia, the King of Prussia would technically then become the King of Spain also, which was not a good situation for France, as it would be bordered on both the sides by a relatively hostile Germany or Prussia at that point of time. Therefore, the King of France, Louis the, I don't know, 18th or 19th, approached the Prussian king, and there was some uh, conversations between them, dialogue between them through telegraphs, which passed through Bismarck, and he basically doctored or uh, you know uh, took selective information from that and leaked it to the press, making it sound very insulting to the French, wherein the Prussian king was insulting the French king, and making it also sound very insulting to the Germans, who found it insulting to their German king. This incident basically created a war. The French king did not have an option but to go to war, and therefore the French invaded Prussia. This time again Prussia was ready, and therefore responded by a deadly takeover of the French territories surrounding Paris, and not only taking over a lot of French soldiers as prisoners of war, but also taking their king as a prisoner of war. And they made France sign a very humiliating treaty under which they took a lot of reparation money. They took over the territories of Alsace and Lorraine. They also, uh, to add insult to injury, crowned their king Wilhelm I as the Emperor of Prussia in the Palace of Versailles, which happened to be the actual residence of the King of France. And thus, Bismarck managed to unify the southern German-speaking kingdoms into what was then called as the Empire of Prussia and was later known as Germany. Now, because of all this, because of this unification, two major things happened. Germany became a major industrial country because it now had major resources of coal and iron, which were a big necessity to become an industrialist nation. Within the next few years, it overtook Britain, which was a major industrial hub. Second thing that happened was it basically stepped the toes, or rather riled up France, which was now seeking and desperately seeking a revenge against Germany. Bismarck basically responded by making a lot of alliances in order to keep France isolated. And this basically is moving towards what was the First World War. And we'll talk about that in one of our next videos.